What if I told you that it doesn't need to take 10 to 15 years to be in a leadership position? In this episode of Design Ahead, we're going to take a look at the biggest misconceptions and misunderstandings around being a leader. So welcome back to Design Ahead with me, Jake Fernandes, and today I am in the beautiful country of El Salvador, San Salvador to be exact, with this amazing, lovely backdrop behind me. But today I want to talk about leadership, and as I mentioned in the intro, a lot of people have a misconception that it takes 10, 15 years to be put into a leadership role, but my story, I hope, can help prove that it really doesn't need to take that long, and that if you have the right mindset, skill set, determination to get there, you can achieve it in literally half that time. And this isn't just about design. This is pretty much applicable to any job if you want to become a leader. And I'll also describe the difference between leadership and managerial positions. So when you start to understand what leadership and management are independently, you really start to see the value in being a great leader as opposed to just singularly a great manager. And many roles do end up merging the two together, don't get me wrong, but ultimately I do think, and I'll come on to this in a moment, that being a great manager is also in part being a great leader, but not necessarily the other way around. Leadership ultimately is about guiding and inspiring others, whereas management is more about making sure that the processes that need to happen and that people can get from A to B. Leadership is about the vision, managerial positions are about the structure. But the best managers that we all have also, I'm sure, are great leaders. They're people that have had a vision that we've bought into, we've understood, followed, put our trust in, and ultimately been rewarded at the other end. They're not the ones that micromanage, putting you under extreme stress and pressure to get things done. They're the ones that ask, how are you doing, rather than what are you doing, essentially. And I'm sure from hearing this, you're already sorting the managers you've had into your head into one of the two categories. So I'm here to tell you why it's important to become a great leader and how you can do so to then become a great manager if you want to. So a little bit about my story. I started in the industry a little over 5 years now. So in January 2020 as a graduate designer. And I spent the first 6 months just getting to grips with what it means to work within the industry, working on internal projects, especially creative projects that allowed me to learn skills and tools like Sketch and InDesign at the time, of course then followed up by Adobe XD and now Figma. And it just gave me a bit of a grounding of what it's like to work in a design agency. So the next year after those 6 months, I was put onto a project and I was again taught the inner workings of how it is to work within a product development or an HCD team. So I was working with other designers, I was working with clients, I was understanding tasks that I needed to perform to make sure that we created designs that were worthy of being developed in the long run. So I was co-designing, I was presenting ideas back, and towards the end of that project, I was much more involved with the client discussions and playing it back directly to the client, rather than just to my design lead or manager who would then play it back for me. And I think by this point, I was then kind of seen as a midweight designer, so I was given more responsibility, more trust on the things that I'd be able to do, starting to understand fully how projects work and the expectations that would be placed upon me going forward. So by this point, I'm about 1.5 years into my career, and then I was put on to another project for a year, again becoming more and more involved in the inner workings of it, more involved in client meetings and the earlier and later parts as well. So that original project kickoff I'd then be a part of up until the point of final handoff and sign off. Managers would kind of ask for my input on things, see how things are going, if we need to change direction on anything, or often come to me for advice, which meant that they were putting a lot more trust and faith in me and the work that I was doing. I would then be exposed to things like bid planning meetings because I said that I was really interested in that area and I really wanted to grow quickly as a designer. So then after 2.5 years, I left my first company and moved to a new one where I was fast-tracked to a senior designer on paper. So I made sure in that interview to highlight all of the different things that I was doing, the different things that I was exposed to, like those bid planning meetings, and help to understand that I did have the experience, I did have the know-how and the determination to be working at that level. And I'm very, very glad that that all paid off and came through in that interview. So again, I was put onto a long-term client project with another UX designer. It was just the two of us doing all of the HCD work, from research to interface designs to workshopping, everything that you can imagine that comes under HCD up until the point of development, we were handling between the two of us. And he was a lot more experienced than me. He was a UX strategist with, 10, 15 years extra experience on top of mine. So it was a real privilege to be actually working alongside him rather than under him. And again, gave me more exposure to things like project management and solutionizing at that high level. He was someone that I could learn a lot from. I'm very grateful for that opportunity to be put in those spaces to again further my career, and then in turn, after about 1.5 years on that project, project, was able to go for promotion to lead designer. And as I said at the start, you're typically looking on paper at 10 to 15 years to be put into a position of lead designer. At this point, I was 4.5 years into my career. I presented my case to the senior leadership team and senior management within HCD, and they felt like I ticked all the boxes and were happy to promote me. And that's where I am today. I'm no longer at that company, as you might have guessed from the fact that I'm currently traveling Central America and starting up the business of Design Ahead to help educate people on the different inner workings and how you can focus on simplicity as a core value that will help you further your career and be able to get to these positions a lot quicker. So today I want to give you some of the misconceptions and the actual realities, trials and battles you might face when you're looking towards becoming a leader or putting yourself into a leadership role. So the first misconception is that you need to be a master of all of your tools in your toolkit. I feel like this is the most annoying one that a lot of people seem to think is necessary, but really isn't. So for example, take Figma. You know, I was a lead UI designer back at my former company, which, you know, a lot of my responsibilities would sit within Figma and Miro. So you might think, I need to know every shortcut, I need to be perfect at planning things in Figma, I need to have the most structured boards that anyone can kind of come in and dabble and just understand exactly what's going on. That was very much not the case. However, what I am able to do is I'm able to use Figma, I'm able to use design systems, designs, wireframes, whatever it might be, to get the end product in a way that is very much working within the time constraints that we have, because as you know, it's a very fast-paced environment that we all work in. Be able to deliver those to developers, to stakeholders, and make it make sense in an easy, digestible format. So, you know, if we've got 6 months to develop something and I'm working on a work stream that is going to have all of these bells and whistles, this amazing dashboard that is just totally unrealistic to be developed in that time, it's not going to translate well. So what I am able to do is understand exactly what we're able to do, the time constraints, budget constraints, expectations from stakeholders, users, developers, project managers, everybody, and be able to create those designs in a way that is going to be easy to develop in that time frame that has been given. So no, I don't need to know every Figma shortcut. I can learn on the go, of course, if I do need to find something out. I can use time outside of the project time that I've been allocated to maybe learn some new skills if I feel I need to, but you don't need to learn every inner workings of the tools that you've got. You need to know how to use them effectively, how to use them well, create a core offering that you can then adapt on the fly to make sure you get the outcomes that the team need and want at that time. So the second misconception is that leadership is about management. And as I've said before, it really isn't. So if you think about a ship sailing, leadership is about setting the vision, setting course, and making sure that people buy into it. You need to show how you're going to get from A to B. It's going to be easily digestible steps. People, as I say, are going to buy into that vision, and everyone's going to be on the same page. Management is about steering it, so making sure that all of the different bits and pieces are in place, making sure that you're going in the right direction, making sure everybody else is doing the right thing to help to fulfill that vision. So as you can guess, great managers are also great leaders, but they aren't one and the same. You can very easily be a great leader without being in a management position. And misconception number 3 is that you need years and years of experience. I really hope that my story before really proves that you don't need years and years of experience. You do need the opportunities to prove yourself, but again, if you've got enough determination, willpower, and the skills and the ability to pay back trust that people put in you, you're going to be rewarded by promotions, by raises, by new opportunities, whatever that might be, going on your progression towards a leadership role. So some of the biggest battles you're going to face, the first one being imposter syndrome. This is something that really just doesn't go away, but over the years you learn new ways to cope with it, new tactics to help manage it. It's a challenge that you just need to overcome. You can't avoid it, you can't put it off, and you're always going to face it at some point in your career, especially when you're taking the next step up. But ultimately, it's going to give you the ability to prepare for things. It's going to give you the ability to grow because you're putting yourself outside your comfort zone. You're going to be comparing yourself to other designers, other work that's been done, but ultimately that's going to help you reflect. And if you can turn it into a positive, it really can help drive change. You know, in my step up to a senior and being put on this project where I felt a little bit of imposter syndrome because I was like, oh my God, there's nobody above me here trying to lead this project. And it's kind of my responsibility alongside the other designer. It made me think, right, this is a case in which I need to make sure that I'm doing the right thing, the way in which I can evaluate my own work, the way in which I can sell it to other people, including the senior project team, other developers, And it was a bit of a trial by fire at first, but it made me realize and grow more confident in the work that I'm doing is correct. And then over time, you do realize that you don't need anybody to sign off your work. You can do it yourself as long as you have the buy-in from everybody else on the team. The second problem is that obsession with tools. Similar to what I said about being a master of all tools, there is also this obsession to be constantly trying new tools and have as many tools in your toolkit as you can. And I just don't think that really works. What you need is to understand your core tools, like if you were using Figma, Miro, if you were an expert in running certain workshops or research sessions, you need to know how to do them well, and you need to know how to manipulate and adjust them depending on the challenges you're facing. You know, a great chef isn't defined on the knives that they use, they're defined on the food that they cook. It's about the outputs, and if you can find something that helps you consistently deliver great outputs that are used effectively by the rest of your team, then stick to that, make sure it's adjustable, make sure it's effective, and ultimately, as I said, if the outputs are great, you're golden. And the third challenge is picking battles. And now what I mean by this is sometimes you're going to have designs, you're going to have research that isn't bought into by other team members or senior stakeholders. And sometimes, rightly, you need to challenge that. If you really do believe, if there's a lot of research and evidence to back up what you're doing, then you need to kind of push through on that. However, there are certain battles that really aren't worth your time and effort, and you do also need to hear out other people's point of view. For example, there may be a great design that has been advocated by the users strongly and you feel is very, very necessary to be doing, but then when it comes to development, they will tell you that it's going to take way too long to build and it's just not feasible. In that case, you could advocate that yes, the users have said that this is a massive priority. However, the battle probably isn't with the developers at that point. It then becomes with senior management and stakeholders and ultimately whoever's running the budget and time constraints. But if there is a good reason that, you know, it's just going to take too long to develop, it's not worth kind of carrying on that battle, and it is trying to see the middle ground and trying to figure out, okay, what can we do in the time constraints we've got? Are there things that we could prioritize from what the users have said or the designs that we've crafted? And then ultimately creating something that is tangible, deliverable within the time constraints that have been provided. So a few actionable steps that you can take to help progress your career. First is to say yes to challenges. And now, by which I mean, you know, don't say yes to something that is way out of your comfort zone. You know, if you're a researcher who's been asked to be put into a developer role that you have no experience and knowledge of, I wouldn't necessarily say yes. But what I would say is that any challenges that you might face that might be seen as a level above you, so for example, if you're a junior expected to be presenting back in client meetings or involved in those earlier stages, definitely say yes. You know, you're going to be protected by your lead designer or manager, and it's going to give you fantastic experience that is then going to help you elevate your work to the next level. Number two is to care deeply about what you do, and I think everybody that works within HCD really does have this. It's an area that does require a lot of empathy, especially with users, stakeholders, team members, and we do really care for what we do and we advocate for the best designs. But making sure that comes across within your relationships, across the team, within stakeholder meetings, and that you do genuinely care about the success of the project and not just your area is very impactful and will go a long way to forming strong connections across the board. Number three is to build your brand, and what I mean by this is that you need to understand what kind of designer or researcher or content writer that you are. You need to understand your strengths, your core interests as well. So, you know, as a designer, my core ethos are around simplicity, minimalism, etc. So I make sure that that comes across within my work, whether that be my portfolio, project work, consulting advice, whatever it might be. And you might feel the same or you might feel different. There might be something else that you're really passionate about or a style that you feel is really effective in your work. So whether you're creating that portfolio or working at a project, you need to make sure that personality as a designer really comes out and also fits amongst other people within the product development space. And number four is to seek and offer mentorship. Now, if you're a graduate, you're probably going to be more on the seeking side. So maybe you'll take that mentorship in your manager or a senior within your team or perhaps somebody else online. But as you progress through the ranks, it's more and more important to actually offer that mentorship. So as a senior designer, you might look towards juniors or graduates or even midweights to kind of mentor them, help them understand the next level that they need to progress to, evaluate their work, provide feedback and advice, and it ultimately helps you reinforce the things that you've learned across the way and again, gives you more confidence as a designer, looks great on your CV, and helps you progress up the ranks. So as a recap for today, firstly, mindset over tools every single time for me. You need to understand what you're great at, perfecting that, making sure that you have an adjustable skill set, but ultimately it's the mindset, the will to progress, the will to look to the next level, and making sure that you can do so effectively and easily. Leadership is not equal to management, but great managers are also great leaders. It's about being able to set a direction that other people can buy into, being actionable, easy to understand how to get from A to B. And then if you want to take that management side, it's about steering the boat and making sure that everybody gets to that place together. Also about picking battles, making sure that you are aware of the battles that you choose, ones that just really aren't worth having, sometimes are definitely worth backing down or coming to a compromise, whereas ones that are worth having, you advocate strongly, you back up with research and back up with your knowledge. Saying yes to opportunities that will help you progress, making sure that you are effectively moving to the next level and not shying away from anything that might be out of your comfort zone, and about caring what you do. As a human-centered designer, we really need to care for each other, for the work that we do, for the users that we serve, and for the product as a whole. So I really hope this helps people understand more about what leadership is, the different steps that you can take there, debunks a few myths, and also encourages people to take that next step and see where you can go with things. But thank you so much for watching and listening to this episode of Design Ahead. As I mentioned, we've just launched the website on our first playbook. We're also taking on registrations to our Slack community, so go on over to designahead.co.uk to check all of those things out, and I will catch you guys in the next episode.